This presentation is brought to you by Darkshorecapital, crafting capital management solutions for your world. Today is October 26th, 2020. I'm your host, Andrew, and this is This Week in Goldmaking. We're going to go ahead and do our weekly stand-up. For any of you who don't know, this is a section of the show where I go over what I've done over the past week, what I'm planning to do during the next week, and are there anything giving me trouble? I'd like to welcome all of you listening or watching at home to do the same. Feel free to leave a comment on the video, reach out to me on Twitter, or send me an email. Let me know what you've been up to, what you're planning to do, and do you have any problems? And together as a community, perhaps we can help each other overcome our problems. Over the past week, I've been working on my Jards army, which is a topic we'll probably get into a little bit more depth at a later date. Basically, it's a way to mass produce sky golems. The Tide Spray Linen Shuffle continues to yield excellent results. One quick note on that, jewel crafting actually is kind of a surprise contender for a useful application of Expulsum. Over the next week, I'm going to continue the Tide Spray Linen Shuffle. I think that until pre-patch comes, until the pre-patch event where allegedly catch-up gear will exist, I think that's going to be effective and even probably likely going to be still good after that hits as well. Going to keep working on my Jards army. Still got a little bit of work to do on that to get it fully up and running. And crafted transmog, I definitely have been slacking on keeping my long-term evergreen transmog gold making strategy up to date. So that's something I'm going to focus on in the next week as well. One thing that's given me not necessarily a roadblock, but just some frustration has been the WAD garrison. There are some level breakpoints and quest breakpoints required to unlock certain things. And it's just a little tedious for what I'm trying to do. Market update for the week. So, WoW tokens are pretty flat, which is to be expected. I don't think we're going to see much movement on them until the expansion hits. And then my prediction, and keep in mind this is just a prediction, anyone who claims to be able to tell the future doesn't know what they're talking about and should be distrusted. The prediction is that the WoW token price for gold will go down, since I think more people will be interested in acquiring gold to acquire things like gear, consumables, etc. So a greater demand for WoW tokens being sold for gold means the price in gold will go down. Osmanite ore up a little bit over the past week, it seems, and I would suspect that's probably due to uncanny gear selling so well. I think the blacksmithing side of that, and to a lesser extent engineering, uses the osmanite ore quite a bit, so probably a bit more of a demand as people are crafting more and more of that. Again, I think it's a little silly with the free quote-unquote gear coming with the pre-patch events, but more on that later. I don't want to spoil too much. I've got a question later addressing that. Elementium ore, the hot new stuff from the Cataclysm Looterang debacle is on the downturn, it seems. The one thing about the Looterang was you really only need to make it once since it's a toy, and pretty much everyone who forgot and needed to level their Cataclysm engineering has probably done so by now, and anyone who's waiting is probably waiting for the price to come down. So, therefore, the price has gone down. Such are economics. Nothing else too exciting for the rest of the market updates. I do need to check in on my AOTC price. That's definitely a little bit outdated. If anyone knows or has bought an AOTC recently, I'd love to hear what price you paid or were quoted. Bullish Bearish, pretty much the same from last week. Bullish on evergreen gold making methods, ghost iron ore, and various derivatives. Uncanny gear, with the caveats that once the pre-patch event hits, there's a chance that uncanny gear loses some of its luster. And transmog. I think that with a lot of people coming back during the pre-patch and for Shadowlands, more people means more people interested in transmog. Bearish on BFA materials. The expansion is about to be gone, so I certainly would not look into hoarding a bunch of the materials unless you have a really good reason to. that is going to have longevity past the expansion. Raw gold from old raids, as we know, that has been nerfed, so just a little less excited about that now. And then a third one, a new one that I've added here, is cross-server battle pet arbitrage. And I do want to talk a little bit more in depth about why I put it on here. So this is an incredibly saturated market. And that's kind of the TLDR on why it's in the bearish column. If you're unaware of what cross-server battle pet arbitrage means, battle pets can freely be moved across servers. They're a very unique item in that sense, because other items, in order to move them cross server, you have to do a character transfer, which is obviously usually cost prohibitive. But battle pets, you can transfer them for free using your collection log thing. So what you can do is find battle pets that are posted on the auction house on one server for a very cheap price, move them to another server where they're selling for a higher price, and make a profit. And as long as you're not too bothered about where the gold is, or you have a lot of gold that you want to amplify, and you're okay with it being across servers, this can be a great way to do that, to increase your gold supply. Now, it does require a lot of going around different servers, logging in, logging out. This is where having an SSD and any minimal amount of add-ons is going to help increase your gold per hour, if you will. But this is also super easy to do. The barrier to entry is very low. All you need is some startup capital and some servers that you think are going to be worthwhile. And as such, as I mentioned earlier, the market's quite saturated. So the reason it's in the bearish column is because if this is something that you're trying to get into and you're unfamiliar with, I would approach it with care. I'm not saying you're not going to make gold by doing this, but having done it for a little while in the past, it's very slow. It's very slow moving, and you should not expect to get rich quick overnight by doing this. So if you're a new gold maker or somebody who's looking into new things, maybe leave this one on the back burner for later. It definitely pays off to do a lot of research and to know your stuff when it comes to battle pets and selling them across servers. A couple pieces of news for the week. So some items that are getting changes or have changed for Shadowlands, Drums of War, and other named things. So there's a bunch of leatherworking items that are effectively Bloodlust or Heroism for actually anyone, not just leatherworkers can use them anymore. And so it's a way to have Bloodlust or Heroism effect in your group if you don't have a Shaman or a Hunter or a Mage. At a reduced effect, of course. But they have basically caused the ones from previous expansions to no longer work. Because up until now, you could go back, I believe, to WoD, get some burnished leather, or is it burnished leather? Whatever the WoD leather is, and make some drums and go and use it in your BFA Mythic Pluses. Which, is interesting and a little bit out of characteristic for Blizzard, but it was a thing for a while. So this change has changed that. So now crafting old consumable items from previous expansions, such as the Lust drums, is no longer going to be effective. Along a similar vein, the Sugar-Crusted Fish Feast, which was a feast you could acquire via the Dark Moon Fair and was the optimal mana regeneration item for healers in Mythic Plus. That is no longer going to work in Shadowlands as well. I don't know. Yeah, you can have your opinions on whether or not that's good or not, but the fact is that it's coming and you should be aware of it. And then lastly, some changes to the way chests work. This is one that I definitely have a feeling may see some future changes. But for now, chests can effectively stay around forever. It's kind of weird, right? So the way it works is if you have two or more people buy a chest, I don't even think they have to be in the same party. If you have the first person open the chest but not loot the items, everyone else in the group can go and loot the chest as well, freely, until the first person loots the chest. Which is wild, because usually, if you go and play classic World of Warcraft and find a chest in the dungeon, everyone rolls on it, the person with the highest roll gets the chest, blah, blah, blah. You move on with your life, that's how things work. But no, now apparently there's different chests for different people as long as the first person opens it but doesn't loot it. Very strange. This is definitely is a side effect of things like party sync and the time walking, leveling stuff. Something in there has caused this behavior. I'm very certain of it. So what's the takeaway? Well, if you're in a group doing some leveling, for example, in a dungeon, and you come across a chest, maybe just let everyone know, hey guys, there's a change to how chests work. I'm going to go click on this, but not loot it. Then everyone else just loot it, and we'll all get loot for free. And that's just a nice, friendly way to, take advantage of a change, whether it's intended or not, at least until they do make it different. Q&A for this week. Just got a couple questions that I actually sourced from Twitter. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at darkshorecap. I usually put out a message Monday morning-ish just to see if anyone's got any questions that I can answer during the weekly presentation. So let's get into it. First question. How long can this uncanny gear rush possibly last? It has to be over now, right? No, not yet. Again, I'm very certain that the pre-patch event, which will reward it's Nyalotha raid normal level gear just for doing the quest as a way to kind of get you caught up for Shadowlands. Up until then, the rush will definitely exist. People will definitely still want uncanny gear because they will be leveling up, get to max level, and then need some gear. However, when that event finally does happen, which we do not know yet, that's the point where it could fall off. Now, will it? I don't think so. Because I know humans. I've played this game long enough. I've made enough gold off of people in this game and human nature to know that people are still going to just buy the gear instead of going and doing 30 minutes of questing. That's just a truth. So I think realistically, we are probably going to be able to make uncanny gear for a profit and have it sell very rapidly up until Shadowlands drops. And even after that, well, probably not after Shadowlands drops, but up until the actual next expansion happens, I think you can expect to make uncanny gear profitably. Next question. In the beginning of Shadowlands, what is the right amount of gathering to sell versus gathering to increase other alts professions? This is a great question. It's basically asking, should I just sell my raw goods that I gather, or should I use them to increase my crafting professions? And I don't think there's a good straight answer, because it's going to depend on many factors as the expansion unfolds in the first few weeks. It's definitely true that items that are gathered, raw materials, are generally more expensive for the first few weeks and months of an expansion. That much is known, and we can rely on that one pretty well. But is it better to just sell those items straight up, get the cash, and invest in other things, or is it better to use the items to get up your crafting professions? Now it's probably going to be a mixture of both, honestly, and it's going to be a balancing act to figure out what's the correct move. Now, I'm going to actually take this a little bit further because I think that the real thing to make gold is actually deciding to be doing gold making things versus to not be doing gold making things. Now, try to imagine yourself in the future. Shadowlands has dropped. You've leveled up to level 60. And now you have a choice. Do you want to go run some heroics, some heroic dungeons, try to get some gear? Do you want to work on your world quest? Do you want to level an alt? There's many things you can do, all brand new, exciting things in the end game. But chances are most of those things aren't going to give you a concentrated stream of gold. Now, if you make the decision to go out and gather versus, do endgame stuff that's not going to make you gold, well, the decision to go out there and gather things in the first place is the biggest increase in gold income that you're going to make. So the debate between whether or not you should sell the materials raw or use them to level your professions, while it is important, it's not the most important decision. The most important decision is, how do you want to spend your time in the first few weeks of Shadowlands? If you want to get in on that early expansion gold rush, you need to make that decision now and decide to spend that time making gold instead of, playing the new content, which I know is tempting, right? But again, this is a human nature thing, right? We're going to have this content for a long time. And if you're not concerned about getting a world first title for something, but you are concerned about making gold, well, I think it's a very reasonable thing to consider not playing the expansion as it's meant to be played for the first few months. As crazy as that sounds. You can look at people who've done the Dark Moon card shuffle in the beginning of expansions before. Like, they just literally sit there, buy herbs off the auction house, shuffle them into cards, and sell them for massive profits. But they're also choosing to do that instead of play the game. So that's my answer to that question. It's obviously very complicated, and the more that you pay attention to things and the more time you dedicate to making gold in general, the more success you're going to have at the end of the day when it comes to making gold. That's going to wrap it up for this week in gold making. Again, my name is Andrew here for Dark Shore Capital. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening, and yeah, love to hear. What did you think? Am I crazy about my predictions about Shadowlands? Are WoW tokens going to increase in price instead of decrease in price? I don't know. These are all things that will remain to be seen, but it's always fun to talk about. You can follow me on Twitter at darkshorecap. Of course, I am on YouTube, Darkshore Capital. You can find this presentation on the various podcasting platforms, Google Podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, SoundCloud, if you will. And other than that, I've been streaming a little bit on Twitch, on the Twitch platform, doing some more long-form discussions about things and just general, I'm calling it product development. So if you are interested in seeing any of those, give the stream a follow. I do record all the VODs and have them available on the YouTube at a later point in time if you wish to catch them there. I think that about wraps up all the business at the end of the presentation. So thank you, everyone, once again. My name is Andrew. Have a wonderful week.